Renegade Thinkers. Transformation, a 4-syllable word that packs a punch. Now that I think about it, transformation is the primary aspiration of just about every renegade thinker. In fact, if you think about past episodes, we've talked a lot about transformation. It's not just to improve or enhance, but to flat out transform your brand, your organization from something old to something new, from something modest to something amazing. That's it. That's what great CMOs do. Now, as kids, we are naturally drawn to stories of transformation, whether it's Peter Parker becoming Spider-Man or Rey or Luke becoming Jedi. In those stories, classic hero journeys, the plot is set in motion by a cataclysm of some sort. Peter loses his uncle, Luke's home is destroyed, and then our hero faces a series of tests, of challenges, and usually some setbacks. Those plot twists keep the story interesting. Then there are the sidekicks who add a little humor, acting as a foil for the otherwise overly earnest hero or heroine. Now, this is fiction. This approach is tried and true. You deviate too far from that structure and you'll lose your audience. But what about real life business transformations? How do those stories unfold? Are they triggered by cataclysmic events? Who are the heroes? Who are the sidekicks? What are the setbacks? Well, let's find out, shall we? My guest today is James Whitemore, the CMO of NetApp, and a company that is not only in the middle of its own transformation from being a hardware company to a software company, but also one that is riding the tsunami known as digital transformation. James, welcome to the show.
Hey, Drew, thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
So first of all, how are you and where are you?
Well, I'm Boulder, Colorado. I'm doing good, thank you. Enjoying a period of being able to stay at home and not the normal travel schedule, but yeah, doing good, thanks.
Well, and of course, the audience will pick up on the accent. I'm curious, having grown up in England, I believe, did you have a favorite superhero growing up?
Batman, always Batman.
Batman.
But yeah,
Yes, there was a simple transformation from
exactly.
right.
But,
and what was it about Batman that appealed to you?
I think it was the English butler. Kind of like I could relate to him. Yeah.
Speaking of sidekicks, yes, Alfred
exactly.
was one of the great
Alfred.
of all time.
Yeah.
Now, I used in early episodes of this show, I used to ask CMOs if they had a superpower. When you're asked that question, do you think as a CMO you have a superpower? Is there one area that you're particularly good at?
Listening, I think, is my superpower. The ability to shut up and listen, which isn't kind of like that normal amongst my peers, I don't think.
No, you're right. And my father, who was the featured hero of episode 100, would agree with you completely. And it's funny. I took acting at one point in my career, thinking maybe that would be a fun and a diversion. And the thing that shocked me is that, acting is acting is listening. And so you think about that. Okay, wait, acting is listening, but managing and leading is listening, both to your customer and to your employees. Okay, so listening it is. Now you've been CMO at NetApp for a year and at the company for 4. Yep. Take us back to November 2019. What was your mandate?
What was the mandate? Wow, there was so much, so much going on at that time. If you think about NetApp, it's a 28-year-old company, and has been very consistent in what is at the core of its business for the last 28 years. And about 6 years ago, we really started on this journey of putting our technology into the hearts of the world's biggest clouds. That was a multi-year journey from a technical and an engineering perspective, working with the likes of Google, Microsoft, and AWS, and all the other major cloud players around the world, around really kind of like integrating technology, our technologies into their clouds. But about a year ago, kind of like all of those products really came into commercial general availability. They've been through all the engineering phases, pre-release beta type of phases, and about this time last year is when they all came into general availability. And so my primary mandate was, hey, you've got to support that business. You've got to go drive revenue. You spent 5 years making this a reality. Now let's get some, start to see some revenue happen behind those products. So that was really the prime mandate.
All right, so you've got this. Your mission is to sort of drive revenue for new products. Talk a little bit more about what that meant from a marketing standpoint. What were the challenges that you sort of had to overcome to start to do that?
Yeah, and then if you think about it, Drew, it's so much more than new products. Basically, you have a company that for its entire history has been selling in a traditional data center enterprise hardware and software type of way. And the mandate was really about, hey, we're now selling cloud services, completely different. If you think about the traditional sales cycle for data center solutions, it's 120 days. There are hundreds of touch points with the customer from first inception of the deal process to actually getting systems installed and into production. There are many people who touch that deal, and everything that we did was geared up about that classic enterprise selling type of motions. And here I have a brand new portfolio of cloud services where people do not want to go through that selling motion. They want immediate access to those products and services. They want trials when they want trials. They don't want to talk to field-based salespeople. They want access to information when they want it, how they want it. Completely different selling motion. And that was really the mandate. Go build that that cloud-based selling motion, not just sell new products. So that was really what we set out to do a year ago.
And I for folks who may or may not know what NetApp does, and this is me sort of helping out here, you're not competing with Amazon Cloud or Microsoft. In fact, you help companies get the most out of those, right? Is that sort of how it works?
Yeah, exactly. So you think of NetApp as a data storage company, and over 28 years, our data storage solutions are in the world's biggest data centers. Every industry, every vertical, every geo around the world, companies rely on NetApp infrastructure for their data storage in their data centers. 5 years ago, we took that technology and we embedded it in the world's biggest clouds, so that it's sold through Amazon, through Google, through Microsoft and other cloud providers. And that enables our customers to move those workloads into the cloud as they need to really use the technology which they are very accustomed to in their data centers in the public clouds. It's a software platform. ONTAP is the platform, and it extends across data center into the cloud environments, which is really important when customers are looking to migrate workloads into those different public clouds.
So I want to go back to something that you said and this changing of the selling motion, because it reminded me, I'm thinking of a recent episode recorded with Brent Adamson of Gartner, and he talked about the B2B customer as in the problem that marketers are set up with this handoff from marketing to sales. The customer doesn't want a handoff, doesn't care who talks to them. They want what they want. And so the whole structure in his mind was wrong. From the whole thing was all messed up. So I'm curious if, as you were shifting and you're saying, okay, we're moving, we're not in this traditional selling the hardware, selling the stuff. We've got to be a cloud-based company. What did that really mean from a marketing standpoint? Did you have to change your structure, your relationship with sales? Talk a little bit about some of the big changes that this mandated.
Yeah, we had to change everything. We basically had to rip up the marketing playbook, which had been pretty consistent for at least 10 years at NetApp, and really start again. Everything from the way we define the lead processes, the waterfall models that we use to articulate the marketing investments and the marketing contributions to the business. All of that had to go, and this concept of linear lead flows just completely thrown out the window to a model today where our intention is to get a visitor to our website or someone who's interacting with our campaigns to basically put out their hand and say, hey, I'm ready to talk. Not to put that person through a lengthy qualification process and pass it from marketing to inside sales, from inside sales to outside sales, but just kind of like when that person is ready to talk, we connect them with an expert who may be kind of like a salesperson, an SE, an inside salesperson, but kind of like and that takes place in seconds rather than in the days it would take to move through a classic lead process. So that was that was a pretty fundamental. And then the budgeting process had to change as well in line with that.
So okay, I want to go back to the first part of this, which is basically, again, I'm going to sort of repeat so I can understand. We got to get the customer to raise their hand and say, I'm ready to have a conversation. So all the work that everybody's been talking about for the last few years, where it said, look, the customer does their homework before they call, but when they call, they're ready. They're ready to talk. So what did that mean to you from a staffing standpoint? What were the challenges of doing this? I guess I'm trying to understand, because I get that we're changing the flow and the customer raised their hand. In some ways it's easier because, hey, they're raising their hand and they're ready to buy. We just now have to make sure they get connected with the right person in real time. I mean, I make that sound like it's easy, but
it should be, right?
It should be. But so talk about, because this doesn't happen overnight either. How long did it take to move from the model you described to the new model?
Well, it's really kind of like, it's taken me 4 years to get where we are today. I mean, it's not something I started a year ago when I got into the CMO chair. I've been working on this for 3 years previous to it. And there's a few big things. Firstly, several years ago, we started a process of insourcing critical marketing services. NetApp, like many big tech companies, had outsourced things like email, automation, paid media, a lot of the web kind of like properties management. Those have been outsourced around the world. And in my book, kind of like those are all things which are critical skills to me. Kind of like websites are not something you update on a monthly or quarterly basis. They're something you update on an hour by hour basis. Paid media execution is not something you plan on a quarterly basis. You plan it on a daily basis, and you're constantly adjusting your media strategies. The technology stack that we used it had been in place for 8+ years and was extremely good at operating in those legacy enterprise ways, but not particularly agile in terms of what I needed to do. And so, we started 3 years ago to move a tech stack. So kind of like all of those things were incredibly important. And then kind of like just staffing and the types of skills we had on the team. There's been a kind of like a big shift over the last 3 or 4 years to having a different approach to the content production teams. People who are really looking first at what people are searching on, looking at external kind of like signals for what content needs to be produced versus traditional methods, which are talking to product teams and engineering teams and asking them what you want to say, and then producing kind of like content around it. So those were some of those the big shifts. Does that make sense, Drew?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot going on there. So we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to unpack some of that stuff. All right, stay with us. Okay, we're back, and what we've been talking about is the transformation from a legacy approach to a sort of real-time marketer approach in a sense. And that requires all sorts of different skill sets, both internally from a who works for you, but also yourself. I'm curious, what did you do to sort of get yourself saying up to date on what needed to be done?
Well, eh, my background, kind of like it's pretty mixed between large scale traditional enterprise tech companies like IBM and Sun Microsystems, and then startup companies are much more cloud orientated. And prior to joining NetApp, I've been part of 3 very successful startup companies who are very kind of like much operating in the mode that I need NetApp to do. So kind of like for me, it was kind of like, I had a ton of confidence in what I was trying to do, really figuring out how to scale it on a global basis to a kind of like, a $6 billion revenue stream versus a startup type of environment. So how you take those kind of like startup best practices and scale it on a global way. It wasn't really learning what needed to be done. It was
Right.
more
Okay.
scale.
Right.
Yeah.
You'd already done it at a startup. And it's just so funny that so much of and when you are in startup mode, you're scrappier, you're agile. And of course, it's really hard at a big company to sort of bring that to it. And I can see it. It would take time. And in some ways, the good news is this is an aircraft carrier. It isn't gonna, it's got its own momentum. I seem to recall it takes 5 miles for an airplane to actually come to a halt. You've got a lot of things to do. What would you say as you were looking at this transformation from a marketing approach? What were some of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome internally to get that to get it to happen?
You're bringing sales teams along with you. When come like you're disrupting the traditional relationship that marketing has with sales, particularly things around lead flows, and where you've got a 20+ year legacy of salespeople expecting to receive qualified leads, which they deem worthy to go follow up on, and you suddenly blow all that up and say, hey, you're going to get a whole bunch of triggers and alerts, and you're going to have to work with us to figure out how to interpret those and how to put those to work within your prospects.
Got it.
So are you picking up background noise here?
Yeah, but not to worry about it. This is in the COVID era. We have all sorts of things that I added in the show. Yes, you heard that right. There are some dogs in the background, and that is just fine. This is it's fine. So we're bringing the sales team, and certainly this new model requires a lot more. Oh my gosh, my turn now. Hang on, pause. No worries at all. Dogs in the background, phones ringing. This is just real time, real stuff here. Okay, so what we're talking about trying to get this alignment with sales, and so suddenly you're not necessarily giving them that pristine sales qualified lead, and you're not giving it to them with, "Hey, take your time. This is a real time moment." So did they have to, and how did they sort of take this, and what were their requirements?
Honestly, the environment we've been in for the last 6+ months has been an absolute godsend in some respects, because, for me now to work with our sales teams who are like us, sitting at home in front of their Zoom screens and like, engaged all the time, and they're looking at those triggers and looking at those alerts, they've got time to actually think about what they do with it. If I think about trying to do what we've done in a normal selling world, where those people kind of like, very much more kind of like out on the road in person, it would have been much more difficult. So they've been really kind of like welcoming to these new digital tools that we've given with them, because it's really helped them understand what's happening within their customers. When I can show them, our typical salesperson has somewhere between 8 and 15 accounts. So they're not calling on, hundreds of different customers. And when you can show them kind of like all of the web interactions which are happening within those accounts, what content is being consumed, which people from those accounts are kind of like, requesting content, they really understand the power of kind of like digital marketing. So they've been very, very receptive, and we've been very kind of like very thorough in teaching them how to use this new technology.
And some of this it feels very much like ABM. I'm wondering, and I think we talked about this in the pre and our Story Finder call. There's are you using like a Drift or something for conversation marketing management in real time? What's the big sort of tool here that's really helping drive this?
So Drift has been a key tool, and we piloted that basically for 9 months, and it just went live across all of our sites, all of our geos on the 10th of October this year. So kind of like that went through a very successful pilot. And again, sales teams love it when they get kind of like the Drift records, and they can see what questions were asked, what dialogue led to them actually receiving a trigger from the Drift platform. They love it because it's so much more detailed than a typical lead that would be passed to them through a marketing automation system. So they're starting to really get it.
Now, it feels like your sales force can transform in some ways, in that there used to be the hunter, right? They're out there opening doors, banging on doors. And those people, I think, have been really struggling over the last 6 months, because it's really hard in a lot of cases to just find these people and get in front of them. And even if they do, there's this problem of all these other people on the buying committee. So they're struggling. And so here suddenly it's like, whoa, wait, this is real time. This person is interested. They want to talk right now. It's like, hey, thanks. I mean, but it's a different type of person. It's not a door opener. It's a relationship builder.
Yeah, totally. I think the key for me again though is when a salesperson gets an alert about a specific type of activity, that we show them the complete picture, not just what that specific alert is, that this person accessed this type of content or accessed this type of question, but around that person within that specific account, all these other signals are taking place. And then our salespeople are smart people. They sell complex technology to some of the world's biggest companies. They can figure out kind of like what's going on, whether it's a buying group that they're already engaged with, someone that's tangential to an opportunity they may already have in progress. They're starting to love it. But it has been a 12-month process of educating them how to work with marketing.
And are they, so you're there?
No, well, I don't, we'll never be going like that, kind of like, well, it'll be a good while before, I would say that I'm happy with where we are. I think we're making great progress. That's for sure. Well, my big area of focus right now is with our inside selling teams. And as we've basically transitioned those teams away from their more traditional roles of appointment setting to actually driving engagements with customers, we're doing a lot of organizational planning and design there, as well as shifting some of the marketing processes behind it.
Okay. So we've gotten into the details of this a little bit. We started with this big notion of we had to transform the way the organization was essentially going to market. And then we ended up all the way down to essentially a brand new way for sales to sort of start their interactions. Instead of having to open the door is open and you actually know who's behind it and you've got a lot of information. All right. So when we come back, I want to step back a little bit and just go back to a big picture transformation and see what are some of the other things that you've been doing or thinking about doing to help NetApp get to sort of this next level. So stay with us. Okay, we're back, and we've been talking about this sort of internal transformation of how you go to market. Was there an external transformation in terms of the way you talked about NetApp and the business, that if I were to look at marketing 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago versus today, what's the big change in the story?
Yeah, it has been a huge shift. And again, think about it. A company, 28 years, basically selling to the same audiences, the same type of products and services to the same audiences. Within our marketing audience, around 4.5 million people on average every month that we considered marketable audience, knew exactly what to say to them, whether they were a new prospect or an existing customer. After 28 years, there's very few people within your target segments who don't have your technology in their data centers at some place somewhere. And so most of the conversations are driven around refresh cycles and upgrade cycles. But really, really good at doing that type of thing. And then here we go, we introduce an entirely new set of products and services into the public clouds. The people who consume those services are not necessarily your traditional data center IT buying audience. Much more application centric, much more developer centric. And we basically had to figure out how to talk to that audience. Now, one of the fundamental things about that audience is they really don't care about storage. And when you're a storage company, that's quite a challenge. So we had to figure out what they do care about and how to speak to them, how to show them that they really do need to care about the applications and services that we have available through those public clouds, and how to show them how they are, the things that we offer through those public clouds are much better than the native services that they may have been consuming in the past. So you've got to make sure that they know who you are, why you're relevant, and why the services are different. And you have to do that basically without talking about the underlying technology you're trying to get them interested in. So that was quite a challenge.
And so how do you do that?
Well, you first have to figure out what they are interested in, and there was a ton of audience research that we had to do. And in one of the focus groups that we were doing at the back end of last calendar year, I think it was kind of like just right before Christmas, we had a focus group of a couple of hundred people. And they were asked some basic questions of who NetApp is and what NetApp means to them. And the consensus of that focus group was that NetApp was a smart doorbell company. I was like, okay, right. We got we got some challenges here. And so, that and similar experiences led to just a ton of audience type of research. And there were a few common themes that emerged as areas of interest, both from a technology perspective and from your lifestyle perspectives. And we basically put all that to work. And one of the first things that I did was to go out and bring some agency support in of basically people who had never worked in technology before. It was clear to me that we weren't going to go win the or get the attention of that audience if we try to approach it in a traditional big tech way. So we went out and we got some B2C agency support and set them the challenge. And the end results are very different than what you may see in traditional tech marketing.
And what was the story that helped you tell? I mean, was there a campaign line or promise of some kind that sort of sums up where they ended up?
Well, firstly, what was evident as we looked at all of the audience research is basically they value specialists. They value the best technology that's available to them to get the job done that they are trying to do. And the job that they're trying to do is to harness all of the data around their organizations to make the applications and services that they are developing faster and more valuable to their organizations. They care about kind of like, putting data to work in an application type of environment, and specialist services are very, very key to them. So kind of like the first thing that we focused on is making them aware that NetApp is a true specialist in what it is that we do. In a world full of generalists, kind of like, NetApp is just about the only a true data storage a company that exists as a specialist in data storage. So that concept of, hey, what you do is incredibly specialized, what we do is incredibly specialized, was a key part of that. The second thing that was obvious is they hate kind of like, boring tech marketing, kind of like overinflated claims of, changing the world, empowering kind of like global, change. They don't respond particularly well to that kind of like, very aspirational kind of like marketing. So get it very gritty, kind of like, hey, we understand that your challenge is this, our solution is this. Kind of like speak to them in the language that they are, the language of the problems they're trying to solve, which are much more application centric, much more software centric. And then the third thing is kind of like, just my personal belief is that, hey, the best way to capture someone's attention is to make them laugh or crack a smile. And, you have to have some humor. You have to really approach this as kind of like, the best way to engage this audience is to entertain this audience. And we've seen an entirely new kind of like personality of NetApp emerge for that audience. One that's, very tongue in cheek and very, very much about kind of like having some fun. So those were kind of like some of the key things.
So if I could, and maybe in the show notes, is there a video or something that expresses this personality that has a sense of humor?
Yeah. We can absolutely give you a few video clips and audio clips that you might want to link there. Yeah.
Great. And give me a sense of what those are like. Because, I'm so on board with you. And it's funny because we spent a lot of time talking about these individuals as pragmatic and so forth. And when you finally got to humor, I went, phew, because I in honesty, that our feeling is, for the most part, B2B is B2 boring. It's just, and it's still a feature function kind of a thing. And I almost thought you were going there when you said, oh, I got to go back to my notes here, that, they like gritty, sell the problem solution. I'm thinking, well, that doesn't get you very far. So the thing that distinguishes it is the tone.
Yeah.
And if you don't have an interesting tone, you've lost everybody, because, these are people, aren't they?
Yeah, they're people, they're humans. And, at the end of the day, we're engaging, humans. And actually, that's a really good point, because what I had to retrain a marketing organization to do is think about people, not think about target companies. We're marketing to people. We're not marketing to XYZ corporation. We're marketing to 100 people, 1,000 people within that company, but they're people. They have different interests. They respond to different things. But the audiences that we were really trying to get to, we know that they respond well to things which entertain them, which have some humor to them. So, we came up with a campaign which is basically very self-deprecating. It starts by showing all the things that we're not good at before it introduces the thing that we want them to know us for. We introduced a whole different themes, some very kind of like topical about work from home, and not being able to teach them how to bake a cake, and not being able to teach them how to homeschool kids, through to things which were very kind of like topical to their external interests, particularly things like motorsports, and how kind of like we can't win pole position, or gaming, kind of like just things which says, hey, we can't do that for you, but there's one thing that we really can do. And that has been, kind of like, you're just incredible at how that's helped us reach those audiences, drive engagement with those audiences before we started those campaigns. If I look at the audience, that specific audience, a developer type of audience, our typical click-through rate on a Twitter ad, for example, was less than 1%. Right now, it's right up at 17 and something percent. It's incredible how just shifting the message and doing something which is different and entertaining has impact.
So interesting. Let's go to, so as you look at this, and what I heard, and we haven't talked about, but are running out of time, is that the creative adjusted to the new reality of the COVID era and the pandemic, and you actually sort of, you leaned into that to find the humor in it, which is cool. What were some of the results of this program as you look at it now, that are metrics that matter to you and to the organization?
Well, first up, I look at audience reach, right? And our ability to actually get our message in front of the people that we are targeting. And to me, over the last 3 months specifically, as these programs have really matured in market, I look at new audiences coming into our web properties. Right now, 84% of all traffic coming into netapp.com is first-time NetApp visitors. That's higher than it's ever been in the past. I look at the kind of like the cost efficiency of all the different channels, our ability to leverage social channels versus traditional paid channels, and conversion rates, our click-through rates on social are now astronomical compared to what it used to be, and that shows me that these programs are working. And then, of course, at the end of the day, what the business really cares about is revenue, customer acquisition. Our new customer acquisition on our cloud services within these audience we're targeting is higher than it's ever been. Our cloud revenues are growing ahead of plan. I think in our last quarterly results, you saw us show a 180% plus year-on-year growth in cloud services. I mean, it's having impact. You're seeing it flow through to revenue. And for me, kind of like some of the key metrics are things like days from lead to close, which in our traditional business had always been measured in 120 days plus. In our cloud business is now down below 5. The average touch points it takes to get a deal closed in that cloud business is less than 4 compared to hundreds in traditional business. And those type of things just illustrate the power of marketing and sales working together in new models.
And what's interesting is we spent a lot of this show talking about infrastructure. I'm going to say building up your marketing engine and getting your playbook right. But it sounds like what really helped put it over the top was an insight into the target that you were then able to leverage in terms of creative. You mentioned social media, paid social. You specifically mentioned Twitter. Are you using, have you found the same results on LinkedIn and also Facebook? Are you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Twitter are probably the 2 primary channels for our main markets. But yeah, we see the same results, and to me, the big transformation that took place is is my ability to convince everyone around the company, 10,000 plus employees, that, hey, if we're going to be successful in these markets, we've got to show up differently. And for an engineering group of 3,000 engineers, they expect marketing to focus on articulating the greatest, latest widgets that they develop. And when you show up and show them an ad which is about cake baking, they kind of like look at you and think, where the heck is this guy coming from? And I'm like, but the results speak for themselves. They get that what you're trying to do is connect with new people, to open a door, to start a conversation. And you're not going to do that by telling them that our flash storage is 10% more efficient on SAP workloads than XYZ's flash storage. It's just not going to happen. So results speak.
You've disappointed a lot of engineers in the audience.
But it turns out many of them are interested in cake baking too. And what
That's
has
so
been the
funny.
most rewarding thing for me as we've been through all of this is all of the internal people who reach out to me and say, hey, this is really different. And this is the first time I've ever felt it appropriate to show NetApp ads to my kids, and they thought it was really funny, or share it with my partner. I'm like, people really buy into it because it's relevant to them too. They understand, that these are challenges they're dealing with.
I love it. All right. So as we sort of bring this conversation to a close, the transformation that essentially happened, there was an organizational transformation and there was a brand transformation, and they happened in a period of huge transformation in the world, right? As the world moved to the cloud. So timing is everything. It's good that you were ready for the cloud transformation as far as it were, and then we're able to sort of lean in it. So I'm going to just track back for a second as we think about this. There is a problem between marketing and sales in a traditional way. It can be fixed, and it has to be sort of structured, restructured from the ground up. It means you need a new marketing team probably to think about this, and it means you got to get sales to rethink their drink as well. It helped in the thing we didn't really talk about it, but there was a new product which allowed for a new story, or frankly required a new story. And there was a new target audience, which frankly required a new story as well. So you don't transform for transformation's sake. You transform because you need to. And there were a lot of things, a lot of transformations that happened in this show. All right, I'm going to ask if you are got an audience of CMOs and they're thinking about going on the journey that you just did, give us 2 do's and a don't.
2 do's and a don't. You got to think about the individuals. You've got to understand the individuals that you're trying to get to. You will not be successful at thinking at a company level. You got to be brave. You got to be prepared to be laughed at. I'm like, I can't tell you how many times I walked into our CEO staff group, and I'm like, my peers around the table all started sniggering when I told them that we were going to use the agency who had successfully gotten KFC out of their slump, or kind of like, you've got to be prepared to be ridiculed a little bit, because if you are absolutely sure of what you need to do, people will take a little while to come along with you, and don't back off. Like I'm like, you cannot back off. You've got to drive the organizational change, the technology change, and kind of like, the brand change. And brand is not just about kind of like, the advertising. It's about the kind of underlying messaging and corporate narratives, about the corporate values, and you just got to look at it from a an entirely big picture, and do not back off.
Be brave. I love it. All right, Renegade Thinkers, there you have it. James Whitemore, CMO of NetApp. Thank you for being on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And for the listeners, as always, if you feel like it, if you want to transform this show, do me a favor and go on your favorite channel and give us a 5-star rating, or share it with a friend, because sharing is caring. Renegade Thinkers Unite is written and directed by Drew Neiser. Hey, that's me. Audio production is by Sam Beck. The show notes are written by Melissa Caffrey. The music is by the amazing Burns Twins, and the intro voiceover is Linda Cornelius. To find the transcripts of all episodes, suggest future guests, or learn more about quite possibly the best marketing B2B agency in New York City, visit renegade.com. And until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.